Hi, Royal Ones. This is Miss Gigi. I'm coming at you today with a very important message. Let's get straight into it. Um, let's talk about the significance of African American slavery. This is Black History Month, and let me tell you something. The underlining celebration of Black History Month is because we overcame slavery. Our ancestors overcame slavery with the help of our civil rights leaders. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. When I was in college, one of my Caucasian classmates, they actually said to me, this male, angry white man said to me with a nasty attitude, "Why are y'all whining about slavery? The slavery of black people so much. The Indians was in slavery a lot longer. I don't see the point of everybody to keep talking about it." In the conscience of most, nobody understands why slavery was taken so far out of hand to the point that it violated the morals of mankind well before it was against the law. Slavery is and was morally and ethically wrong. The continent of Africa was targeted simply because of the color of our skin and the resources of the continent. That's why people will never get over it or stop talking about it, simply because of the resources on the continent of Mother Africa. It was stolen. The very same thing they said we're guilty of, they accused the blacks of being lazy and stealing. It was stolen first, and we were trying to recover what was stolen from us. Slavery mainly existed because there was a serious need for labor in the South, and the paid white workers did not want to work in the conditions of the plantations, so slavery became an essential part of developing the New World. The harsh treatment of our ancestors and so many of the civil rights leaders, they died trying to give us Africans and African Americans our freedom and our civil rights and establish our civil liberties. Talking about slavery is a cultural necessity because it is an important thread of the American fabric and the development of the United States of America since 1526. I don't care if you do not embrace the facts or not, but I want you to understand that this is the history of the slavery, is the history of the United States during the formation of the 13 colonies, and that's on period. I am not honoring my ancestors' slave history by blaming, hating, or using racial slurs or harboring any anger towards a certain race of people. I am simply aware of my history, my family history. I'm proud of my ancestors were able to. I am oh my God, the result of them not being here. But because I'm here to make a difference. That's why everything I do, I try to push it to the max every day and be a positive example. And so that's what I'm telling you, that no matter what, we are the dream that they wanted to become. They couldn't be here and live and freedom, but we can and we are. That's why I try to be the best example of how to be every day as a representation of my family, as a representation of my ancestors, to bring them proud, to make them proud. And I know that they're in heavens looking down on me in pride because I get up and I take it to the max. That's what I'm saying, instead of picking up a gun or fighting back or looking at all these negative images that's designed to piss you off, they're doing this on purpose to try to keep us from being great or to try to be a distraction. That's why I said just don't even turn that negative images off. Don't even look at the TV. Don't look at the news. Don't look at the culture. Don't look at all these violence that they're showing us from before. That's just designed to piss up, make you angry. I'm proud of my ancestors because they were strong enough to bear the worst adversity in history known to mankind. It was taken out of proportion, the mistreatment of my ancestors, and we will never forget that. As a race of people, we must never forget that. And the way that they treated Jesus Christ in the Bible, he was the first black man that ever endured the evils of man. That's why they whipped him and beat him and crucified him. A lot of people think that, the white ancestor started slavery because he owned one slave, when in fact, it was a black man who started it all. His name was Anthony Johnson back in 1600 and 1670. And then he was captured by an enemy. And then he was sold to the Arab Muslim slave traders. But in 1654, it was time for Anthony Johnson to release his black slave, John Kaser. He was a black servant. And Johnson to Kaser, he was extending his time. So Kaser left to work with a white man named Robert Parker. And then in 1655, the court ruled that Johnson could hold Kaser indefinitely, and the court gave judicial sanction for blacks to own a black slave of their own race. So Kaser became the first permanent slave, and Johnson became the first slave owner. So slavery was taken to the another level by the white slave masters. The slave masters turned slavery into a nightmare of abuse and cruelty that shocked the conscience of everyone in the world for the next 245 years. Slavery was brought to the New World since 1501. From 1526 to 1867, approximately 12.5 million slaves had been shipped from Africa, and 10.7 million had arrived in America. The first slave voyage direct from Africa to America had approximately set sail from 1526. The volume of slaves from Africa reached 30,000 per year in the 1690s and 85,000 per year in 1691. The majority of slaves were brought to British North America between 1720 and 1780. And then between 1821 to 1830, over 80,000 people left Africa in slave ships. When the United States became a nation in 1789, there are almost 700,000 slaves here in the U.S. The Africans carried to Brazil came from Angola. The Africans carried to North America, including the Caribbean, were mainly from West Africa. Only 6% of African slaves were sent directly to British North America. Well over 90% of African slaves were imported to the Caribbean and South America. By 1825, the U.S. had a quarter of blacks in the New World. The first Africans arrived in Jamestown, Virginia in 1619 by Dutch traders, captured them from the Amistad, the Spanish ship, which was John Rolfe. Slavery spread throughout the world. African American slaves helped build the economic foundations of the new nation in America. The American Civil War in 1861 to 1865 was one of the bloodiest wars fought. Through the Union, this victory freed 4 million slaves. The Civil Rights Movement emerged in the 1960s. 6.7 million slaves were imported to the New World during the 18th century. Most slaves lived on large farms and large and small plantations. Slave owners sought to make slaves completely dependent on them. They were prohibited from reading and writing. Masters even had sex with the slave women, while rebellious slaves were brutally punished. Slave marriages had no legal basis, but slaves did marry and raise large families. But nonetheless, the slave masters did not hesitate to divide the slave's family by sale or removal. The 13th Amendment was adopted late in 1865, which officially abolished slavery, and the slaves received rights of citizenship and equal protection of the 14th Amendment in 1868, and also received the right to vote in the 5th Amendment in 1870. But the provisions of the Constitution were often ignored and violated. By 1877, the rebirth of the white supremacy and the rise of the Ku Klux Klan had triumphed in the South. When Abraham Lincoln became president, his anti-slavery views were well known. In September of 1862, Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, and on January 1st of 1863, he made it official that slaves within any state or any designated part of state shall be forever free. This freed some 3 million slaves in the rebel states. From 1830s to 1860, a movement to abolish slavery in America gained strength in the northern United States, led by Frederick Douglass and white supporters such as Lord Garrison and Harriet Beecher Stowe. Free slaves and other anti-slavery Northerners began helping fugitive slaves from southern plantation to the north in the 1780s. I'm sorry. Harriet Tubman, born Aramita Ross, born a slave in Maryland, escaped slavery in 1849 because she endured harsh beatings and working in the field. She left behind her husband and her family. She began the infamous Underground Railroad, which had gained momentum in the 1830s during the turbulent 1950s, which she helped free 40,000 to 100,000 slaves to reach freedom, including her family. Harriet Tubman made 19 trips to the South. The Underground Railroad was not underground, or was it a railroad? The name came from the activities was done in secret and in the darkness, wearing disguises. The network of routes extended through 14 states to Canada. The idea of organized outsiders or slave unions undermining the institution of slavery angered the white Southerners, which led to their demands of the 1840s that the fugitive slave laws be strengthened. Rewards were offered by slaveholders for Harriet Tubman's capture, which reached up to $40,000. So this is why the significance of slavery is important to talk about it, because in spite of everything, our ancestors still became great through us, through our birth. And that's why I say that we have to watch our character. And even though the people that try to hinder us and keep us from being great, we're going to be great anyway. And that's why we need to rise up and continue to move forward and stay positive no matter what, and ignore and overlook everything that they try to do to hinder us, and just remain true to our character and represent our culture as a people, and just be proud and hold our head up, because slavery ain't nothing to be ashamed of. It's everything to be proud of, because they oppressed us and they wanted to hold us down and to keep us from being great, because we are great. Okay, Africa ain't never need nobody. Everybody always need Africa because of the resources. Know who you are and know that the color of your skin shows value. All right, my dears. We are royal ones. That's where royal came from, because we are African royalty, okay, in our DNA. All right, royal ones, let me know what you think about this episode, this message. Don't forget to comment, share, like, and subscribe. Love, hugs, and kisses. Bye.